All right, good evening. This is the Frankfort Link live from Link NKY. Be sure to follow us online at linknky.com and on Facebook at Link NKY. We used to be known as the River City News and Fort Thomas Matters. For those of you who are new to this thing, I'm Michael Monks coming to you live from Northern Kentucky University this evening, where we just recorded parts of a brand new podcast debuting next Tuesday with the launch of our new website, linknky.com. It's going to be fabulous. We got a good look at it today. It's going to be a really beautiful upgrade to the websites we've been using, and we can't wait for you to see it. As always, I am joined by Link NKY politics and government reporter Mark Payne. He is in Frankfort for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly session, and he comes from the One NKY Frankfort building. Mark, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
And I'm at NKU, where Dr. Ryan Salzman is an associate political professor and a political science professor. Dr. Salzman, it's good to have you back on as well. We always note that you are also a Bellevue City Councilman. Thanks for being with us.
Well, and I am coming from Bellevue. So how is NKU? Are we thawing yet out there? I was hoping to get out there.
Well, let me tell you, it's not so bad. What you need to worry about as a councilman, rough driving on Fairfield Avenue. Honestly, rough driving on Fairfield Avenue. I want to talk to Mayor Cleaves very, very soon about the condition of that street. Same for Mayor.
I'm gonna send that on right now. I'm gonna send it on, Sam. Right.
Appreciate that. And tonight, we've got three Northern Kentucky lawmakers joining us to talk about what's been going on in Frankfort and how it impacts us here locally. Two state senators and one state representative. State Representative Kim Banta, Republican from Fort Mitchell. Representative Banta, thank you for being with us this evening. We have Republican State Senator John Schickel of Union. Senator Schickel, thank you for being with us also. And from Kenton County, from Taylor Mill, Republican Senator Chris McDaniel. Senator McDaniel, thank you for being with us also.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
All right, if you've got questions, comments, just drop them in the comments on this Facebook live stream. We'll get to them. What have you been seeing in Frankfort? What do you want to know from your lawmakers about issues here locally? Or how is Frankfort impacting the local Northern Kentucky community? Drop a comment or send us an email at news@linknky.com and we'll get to them. Mark Payne, big week in Frankfort. Obviously, a lot of legislation is moving, a lot of news is happening. But everyone knows that the real leader in the Commonwealth of Kentucky at any given time is whoever is the head coach of the men's basketball program at the University of Kentucky. And John Calipari was testifying in the state Senate this week. So tell me, what was going on there?
Yeah, so Coach Calipari was testifying on Senate Bill 6, which is the name, image, and likeness bill.
This is the thing that allows college athletes to make money off of their own image. This has been a long controversy for a long time, and they're finally able to do it here.
Yep. Well, not yet, technically. Well, they are able to do it because the governor issued an executive order over the summer, which allowed them to do it. The bill that was passed out of the Education Committee, if it goes through the Senate and then goes through the House, it could become law eventually. So it's a big deal. It's one of the first of its kind in the country, and it would allow college student athletes to make money off their image, to build their own brands while they're in college, which is a huge thing for most college athletes because they're not going to go on to be professional players.
And again, that is Mark Payne, who is the Link NKY state politics and government reporter embedded in Frankfort for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly. You can read his reporting at rcnky.com and then starting next Tuesday at linknky.com. Mark, what were the other highlights this week?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff was going on with the Senate. I'm going to stay in the Senate Education Committee while we're still there with the Senate Bill 6. So today, the transgender sports bill went through the Senate Education Committee, Senate Bill 83. It passed out of the committee, and it is essentially going to, for transgender girls that transition from boys, they will not be allowed, if this passes into law, participate in girls' sports in Kentucky. And then staying in the Senate in the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, which Senator McDaniel chairs, two big things happened. So a joint resolution 99 passed the other day, which would freeze the value of used cars in 2022 to that of the previous year. And then they heard from Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services Secretary Eric Freelander. There has been a ton of money that has been poured into childcare in Kentucky during the pandemic, both from the CARES Act and both from the American Rescue Plan Act. And so they got a detailed report on how that money was coming in and how it was being spent. And it's pretty interesting. And then last but not least, and this is, so many other things happened, but Representative Kim Banta filed House Bill 290, which is the due process for college students. Say they get kicked out of college, there will be something in place that will, a due process that they'll be allowed to go through.
Well, let's
for
pick it up there,
information.
Mark, and we'll come back to you
Yep.
for more on what's been going on in Frankfort. Representative Banta, tell us about that legislation.
It's really not very complicated. It's just a protection act for students. It's kind of the David and Goliath thing. If a kid gets in trouble, and I know that colleges like to deal solely with kids at that age, and they should, but students should have the right to representation if they're going to get kicked out of something that they have spent a lot of money on.
What are the circumstances that you're concerned about that might result in a student being kicked out? What motivated this bill, in other words?
Well, we started hearing about suspensions and expulsions, and kids who tried to handle it by themselves instead of getting representation, somebody with them to speak. I don't know about you guys, but when I was 19, I probably wouldn't have been able to defend myself very well. And, this way, I just know that everybody got a fair shot before they exit the school. Now, these are not crimes that rise to police level. That police take care of that. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm just worried about school rules. Somebody gets accused of bullying, somebody gets accused of whatever, fill in the blank. They just need to have some representation along the way.
Okay, and so what is the status of that currently? Do we expect that to be taking steps forward?
Yes, I believe it's going to be heard in the Judiciary Committee next week.
All right, that's Representative Kim Banta, Republican of Fort Mitchell. We're also joined by two state senators. Our first time in the 4 weeks we've been doing this, having representation from the upper chamber of the General Assembly. We've got two of them with us, Republican State Senator of Union, John Schickel, and Republican State Senator of Taylor Mill, Chris McDaniel. I like to just start in general by talking a bit about the new districts. And since this is your all's first, I feel like redistricting is old news now, but we do want to hear from you all. You're all running for election again, if you happen to be up this cycle. And I want to start with you, Senator McDaniel. Your district has changed here in Kenton County, and I know that's something that's still on the minds a bit as people familiarize themselves with which candidates and which lawmakers are in their district this time around. Talk a bit about that process and how you feel about where you landed in this whole thing.
Sure, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity. Redistricting is always I say it's kind of like solving a jigsaw puzzle, but every time you put a piece into place, all the other pieces change shape. And that's really what, in large measure, what it's like. And we're governed by a couple of very basic principles. Obviously, one person, one vote being the overriding. And then per the United States rules, we have to be plus or minus 5% deviation. And the Kentucky Constitution also mandates that we split the minimum number of counties possible. Prior to this redistricting, only Kenton, Fayette, and Jefferson were split counties. This time around, we added Warren and Boone to that list as their population growth. So necessarily because of growth in Georgetown, Kentucky, the district immediately to the south of the 23rd, which is the northern part of Kenton, had to shrink. The 23rd district, which I represent, had to grow. So the district pushed a little bit south, picked up 3 more precincts in Taylor Mill, as well as one of the southernmost Covington precincts. Now that made it a little bit over the deviation, which is why in the very northeastern tip of the district, 3 Covington precincts got shifted off into the 24th Senate District out of Campbell County. And so that put us back within the deviation. So I think the district actually is at 104.9%. So it's about as close as you can be and still pass constitutional muster.
There were a lot of questions about that part, Senator McDaniel. Was those why are three precincts in Covington, for example, being pushed over into the district that's currently represented by Senator Will Schroeder, another Republican from Wilder. He's not running for re-election this cycle, but the candidate seeking that office this time around will have some Covington voters to woo.
Yeah. And you know, that it kind of fits nicely there along the river cities. It's a pretty homogenous group. Hopefully this time around we can make that a little bit more homogenous with the 4th Street bridge. We can finalize the construction money there. But you know, like I say, the district immediately to the south had to shrink. Boone County had gotten so big it had to split, which necessarily forced the 23rd south. But as you added that last precinct, it then put you too far over the deviation. So you had to give up those northernmost ones, which actually were a little bit painful because immediately to the river was a pretty decent performing precinct, and I had to give up where my daughter goes to school and other things. So, but that's the nature of redistricting.
And Senator Schickel, we heard Senator McDaniel there talk about Boone County being added to the list of Kentucky counties that are split. You had the big county all to yourself all these years, and now you're going to be sharing it should you be sent for another term in office. Were you surprised? Are you upset about this? Talk about the process and how you feel about where you landed.
Thank you, Michael. Before I comment on that, I want to just say how good it is to have a real reporter in Frankfort again. You know, when I first started 12 years ago, or actually 12 years ago, there were 3 or 4 reporters from Northern Kentucky covering the Kentucky General Assembly, and it was more fun that way. And we've really had, except for, you know, each year we seem to lose 1 or 2, and that's so it's really great to see. Good luck on your venture, and it's nice to have a body that's reporting on Northern Kentucky news.
Well, we appreciate that, and I don't know if Mark Payne is having as much fun as you suggest, but we hope he is.
He's always smiling when I see him. On my district, I'm the luckiest guy in Frankfort. I mean, I have a great district. I'm really spoiled because a lot of my colleagues and friends have districts that are losing population, and Senate districts can get quite large. Some of my colleagues have 5 and 6 counties. That's just a lot of area to cover. I have a very small area to cover of great friendly people. So it's a good district to work, and I'm aware of that, and I'm very grateful for it. I hate to lose Walton and Verona because I have a lot of friends down there, but that's just the way it is, and I think they understand. But Michael, all eyes are really on the new district that's been created, and that's Southern Boone County, because there's no one in that district. So that's going to be a new district with a new state senator. And I think there's 4 people running, 2 from Boone County, 2 from Frankfort. It goes from Southern Boone to Gallatin, I think then Owen, and then all the way down to Frankfort. So it's a lot of territory. So there's a lot of talk about that district, but I love my district. I feel very fortunate.
All right. And Representative Banta, you are District 63, and you have crept eastward. Your boundaries that you currently occupy, they've moved eastward, and you've got a good chunk of the river cities now in Kenton County, and you're into Covington now. And so I think over the weeks that we've been having this conversation, we've analyzed the relationship between lawmakers based in urban, suburban, rural areas, and how their representation is able to transcend those boundaries. We know nationwide politically there's very strong rural urban divide on where people land. Talk a bit about how your district has changed, and also speak a bit about being suburban based, now moving into more urban areas.
I'm really not too worried about that, because when I was principal for so many years at Dixie Heights High School, I had a lot of Bromley, and I had that area down towards the River City. So it's not new to me. And I also do most of my hanging out in Covington. So I love Covington. And I think a lot of my social political views kind of fit in. Talking with Mayor Joe Meyer, He likes some of my bills and things that I've proposed. So I don't think that I'm a big shock to anybody's system.
All right. And that is Kim Banta, Republican of Fort Mitchell. You're watching the Frankfort Link live here on the Link NKY Facebook page. If you're confused about the Link NKY Facebook page, it used to be the River City News Facebook page. As you probably have heard, we were acquired in October along with Fort Thomas Matters, and now we are one entity joined together to bring coverage to the Northern Kentucky region, including from Frankfort with our reporter on the ground for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly session, Mark Payne. We're also joined tonight by Bellevue City Councilman in his capacity as Northern Kentucky University Associate Professor of Political Science, Dr. Ryan Salzman. I know we've talked a bit the last time you were on, Ryan, about the redistricting issue. Give us an overview of that relationship between rural, suburban, and urban voters, whether that gap in philosophy or politics is widening, and whether you see that being an issue in the redistricting maps in Kentucky, particularly in Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, well, certainly there's always going to be, when we try to break things down into R or D, you know, do I wear a blue hat? Do I wear a red hat? Things seem really simple. But when we think about, and I think it's smart to think about the different places that people live. And the reality is that we all have different issues that we prioritize. And I think that's something that often, you know, gets sort of lost in the conversation. And so, you know, if you have a major industry in your community, that is going to be what really drives a lot of what motivates you. And so you may break left or break right, so to speak, but it's that industry is front and center for you. And I think that, you know, when we move through Northern Kentucky and we kind of come up, you know, we're really bound by the river. And so you truly do kind of come up into a funnel. We have surprising amount of similarities, but if we think just generally, if we were to think across the Commonwealth or even nationally, I think that we shouldn't oversimplify it. And instead we should consider what are the current events of what's going on. We can think about things like religion, for instance, that you know, in Northern Kentucky, Catholicism, you know, is a thing, but you start to head south in Kentucky for those people that don't venture out of Northern Kentucky much, and that's not going to be what predominates. And so some of these issues are going to be very different. But certainly when you're creating districts, when you're thinking about the redistricting process, the extent to which, you know, you can kind of start to create these groups and create these districts that keep those together, that can be very beneficial. In super big cities, I'm from Texas, so in super big cities like a Dallas or a Houston, some of these districts can be very small. And I got news for a lot of the people on this call. A state Senate seat in Texas is over 1 million people. And so it's actually larger than a congressional district. But the cities are so big that you end up with these very, very compact. Representative districts are about 150,000 people in the state of Texas. But nonetheless, the same logic applies. But again, I think that it's real important, you know, what is facing the struggles facing Eastern Kentucky right now and some of those districts in the more rural areas. There's going to be a lot of commonality there because of the historical trajectories that they've been through. And so it's certainly worthwhile, but to think in terms of the, you know, rural, suburban, urban divide. We could add ex-urban to the list if we really want to get all the urban planners excited out there. But it's just really important that we not think strictly in terms of R and in terms of D, in terms of Republican and in terms of Democrats. And I think that we actually have a great illustration of that in Kentucky, where the Republicans control so much of the government, and yet there's not perfect alignment. And I'm sure everybody on this call, y'all don't move, everybody freeze, nobody move. But I'm sure there would be a lot of agreement. You know, there are people that you agree with and there's people that you don't agree with in your own party. And sometimes when there's huge majorities, there's an opportunity to see that. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of pay attention to that. And whatever the issue of the day is, just kind of take a moment and dig in and try to learn about that as much as possible.
It's a good opportunity to transition into different philosophies within the same party. All three of our lawmakers here are Republicans representing Northern Kentucky and Frankfort, different parts of the region. And I observed something this week that got me thinking along those lines locally in a way that I hadn't in quite some time. And it's something that tends to happen, I suppose, Ryan, when one party does take control. Certainly, Republicans dominate Kentucky. There are states where Democrats dominate, and Republicans are in the position that Kentucky Democrats are in, for example. But you see infighting perhaps within the Democratic Party in those parts of the country. This might not be an example of infighting as much as just evolving philosophies or stagnant philosophies, and I'm not sure. But Mark Payne is the Link NKY politics and government reporter in Frankfort for us during the duration of the Kentucky General Assembly session. You had mentioned a bill related to transgender athletes that was discussed today in Frankfort. And I want, just for the audience who may just be joining us or who have been watching, recap it for us. Unmute yourself. We're 2 years into these Zoom calls, Mark Payne. Come on now.
One day I will figure it out. Today is not that day. No, but Senate Bill 83 is a transgender sports bill. It passed the Senate Education Committee. And if it is signed into law, what it would do is transgender girls who had transitioned from biological boys would not be allowed to play girl sports in Kentucky. There's two opposing sides of that. Obviously, from the folks that filed the bill, Senator Robin Mills, he mentioned that, it protects Title IX. Girls in sports and Title IX, that's something that they have been working on for a long time to get the same rights as boys. And then on the opposition side, they're saying that girls that transition won't have these opportunities. They won't be able to play sports. There was a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old transgender girls that testified during the committee today. And both of them mentioned that, if this bill passes, they won't be able to play sports. They won't be able to get the same, benefits from playing athletics with their youth, such as, socialization and teamwork and things like that.
Okay, Representative Banta, I'm glad you're on the call today because you are a Republican, and something interesting has been happening in Republican circles that probably wouldn't have happened just a decade ago, certainly not more than a decade ago, when there was a lot of talk about federal marriage amendments pushed during the administration of former President George W. Bush. You're pushing for a lot of legislation. I say a lot, maybe 2 or 3 bills, I believe, this time around that are directly related to people who might identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. And I'm wondering if you could share with us that evolving picture from the Republican perspective, particularly as it relates to the legislation Mark Payne just described.
Well, the reason I'm running the bills that I'm running is because I think that for business in Kentucky to attract businesses from other states, we need to at least have the appearance of inclusivity. I think the one of the bills that you mentioned, it's just simply striking the 4th-degree sodomy, which has already been struck down by the federal government. I would like to get it out of our laws because it's just an unfriendly law. It's against gay men. I mean, is it enforceable? No, but it still doesn't make Kentucky look like the most open-minded, inclusive people in the world. So that's probably one that you're referencing.
And you have been outspoken in support of a ban on conversion therapy in the state as well, a practice that is used to try to suggest that someone's sexual orientation or perhaps gender identity could be changed through some pretty severe counseling methods.
And that's exactly right. It's severe counseling methods. I'm not against ministers talking with kids. I'm not against anyone talking with anyone. It's the fact that 4 countries, I think 27 states have banned this practice. It's a poor therapy practice. I'm not trying to move anything forward except just if we're going to license people in Kentucky and say this is a safe person to take your child to, I think that we should stand behind that.
Senator Schickel, let's bring you in. You represent Union. I think you live in Union. The last time I saw you in person was in Union. just last month at a city commission meeting where the so-called fairness ordinance, that's usually the generic term for a local ordinance that would extend legal protections to people who identify as LGBT or T. And Union now has the distinction of being the only Northern Kentucky city to bring a fairness ordinance to a vote and to vote against it. You spoke against it. And so I guess what I'm setting up here is why speak against that legislation? Is it because, we heard Kim Banta specifically reference gay men, some legislation that were against gay men. Is it the transgender component that is making Republicans, like the Boone County Republican Party that very overwhelmingly spoke against the ordinance in Union? Is it the transgender? Is it gender identity now more so than sexual orientation that is making politicians like you uncomfortable, for example?
Well, I know you have a tremendous interest in this. I go to quite a few union meetings. I live just down the street, and found out just at the last minute, I believe in your on your blog or whatever, that was going to be voted on here. I'm a taxpaying citizen. Us taxpayers do, but somehow you knew, and then I go down and you're there, and that's the first time I've seen you in Union ever, I think, especially. So I know this is a big issue for you. So I'm glad you were there to cover it. And here we are in 30 minutes of this show, and we have some significant things going on in Frankfort that can affect a lot of people. And I guess that you think this is the most important thing. But that being said, my reason for it is just what I said at the meeting, Michael, is that I believe, and most of my constituents believe, but we live in a representative republic, and I was speaking for myself, and that is as a taxpayer of the city of Union, which most of the other folks were not, that we believe in equal protection. We don't believe in special protection. And we have a lot of protected classes. It's rather interesting. Most of us are in a protected class when you run it down. Very few of us are not in a protected class. Once you get over 40, you're kind of automatically in. And I am against protected classes generally. And to set up a special set of laws, especially in a city that apply to a certain group of people, I think is fundamentally un-American. We are kind of indirectly debating that very issue in the United States Supreme Court right now, whether you can do things just because of one's gender or one's race. And I take exception to it. And I think most of my constituents in Union take exception to it too. It is really not about maybe for some folks it is, but for me, it's not really about the gay or the transgender. I'm not as familiar with that. It's about, do we have a protected class for people that are over 40? Do we have a protected class for this group or that group? To especially set that up by local ordinance, I just don't agree with it.
All right. And to your point, Senator Schickel, we will be talking about a variety of issues. We've got a lot of guests here, and we're going to give you the opportunity to talk about what you think is important coming up momentarily. So be careful. I shouldn't say be careful, be patient, rather. We're going to get to some other issues coming up. I'm going to turn to Senator McDaniel, though, as well. And perhaps this is more of a Republican philosophical question. You've been in Frankfort for a couple of terms now, actively involved in statewide politics as well. Are you seeing some sort of evolution or some type of intra-party split on issues related to sexual orientation and gender identity?
I think largely what you see is politics will reflect society as a whole. And I mean, that's the beauty of a representative democracy. We don't just have one person who sits at the top and says, this is the way society is going to function, right? And so I think a lot of what you're seeing is a natural extension of some of those societal shifts. And so I don't know that it's necessarily a shift in the party, because I frankly, like Ryan was talking about earlier, a lot of splits come down to rural and urban. And I will tell you that you have Democrats here who have had shifts in that, and you have Democrats who necessarily have not. And, I think a lot of times our politics reflects societal shifts, and I think that's what you're seeing here.
And Senator Schickel, I should say that you would see me more often in Union if you would get Mount Zion Road fixed a little bit faster. I had to bring an overnight bag the 2 times I've come down there recently. So my goodness, if you could get somebody on the appropriations committee or something to get that project fixed, I'd be down there a lot more frequently. It's a lovely community. You got to unmute yourself.
I got news for you. It is done. So come on out and see it.
We'll look forward to that. You are watching the Frankfort Link live on the Link NKY Facebook page. I am Michael Monks, Chief Content Officer at Link NKY, joined as always by Mark Payne, Link NKY politics and government reporter, embedded in Frankfort for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly session. He is at the One NKY Frankfort building. We're also joined by NKU Associate Professor of Politics and Bellevue City Councilman Dr. Ryan Salzman. Republican State Representative Kim Banta of Fort Mitchell, Republican State Senator Chris McDaniel of Taylor Mill, my old stomping ground, and Republican State Senator John Schickel of Union is with us. If you have questions or comments, please join us. Leave a comment in the Facebook live stream or shoot us an email at news@linknky.com. A gentleman named Fernando Figueroa has a question, and I believe it is related to what we were discussing with Dr. Salzman there. He wants to know about what about rural versus urban commonalities, or is the real friction in governance? Dr. Salzman, why don't you take that question? Of course, if that's the Fernando Figueroa, I think it is. He is the president of Gateway Community and Technical College here.
I just got really nervous. Okay. I mean, you don't usually the questioners from the audience are not the president of the.
Incidentally, to get to that Boone County campus, don't you have to get off at the Mount Zion Road exit?
I think you do.
Yeah, you do.
I haven't had the same
the
issues that
Kroger.
you've had.
You go past the Kroger. I know Union, Schickel. Don't come at me with what I know about Northern Kentucky communities, okay?
Well, and I will. I want to follow up.
Down.
Senator Schickel didn't. If I remember, were you related to smokers as protected class? If memory serves, a few years ago, I know there was a discussion about removing that protected class for smokers.
You're exactly right. We tried, that's a really interesting topic because I sponsored the bill on behalf of the chamber. The chamber and I don't do much together, but we could agree on that. So I sponsored a bill to remove smokers as a protected class. Interestingly enough, yes, you're correct. Smokers are a protected class in Kentucky.
I was waiting for that one. I was waiting for that one for the protected. You'll have to save that one for next time. But they, I think, Dr. Figueroa, the question, there's a lot of different ways to divide it. And honestly, it changes constantly. And I think that certainly our elected officials on this call know that depending on the day, I don't know how much y'all check the news of the day and how much that immediately corresponds to your email inboxes. But I would assume that it's quite a bit. For me and my community, it's whether or not the trash got picked up. And bravo to Bellevue. Michael, your issues with the roads, they have not also been transcribed to the trash pickup, which has been amazing. But about that, that's about it. But it's going to change pretty constantly, pretty consistently. But I'll throw in a few other ways. So we like to think about the urban-rural divide. I like to think about generational divides. I think that's a really important one, especially as we think about LGBTQ plus issues. There's a really significant differentiation, but again, it's not perfect. And that's another thing that sometimes we've lost this ability to discern. We say 52% think this to 48% think that. But we just use the term majority. But that's not the same as 80-20 or 90-10. That's a majority. I mean, that's a far and away majority, but we use these terms pretty flippantly. They make for good headlines, if you will. A majority of people think that, 52-48, as somebody who uses statistics in my work, I can tell you that that's statistically indiscernible from zero. And that's not the same thing, but we still use that. And it's not inappropriate, but for political issues, for policy issues that do have a lot of nuance, that it can be, nobody wants to talk about a tie. There's a lot of sayings about ties, and we'll leave those. But those differentiators, urban, rural, thinking about governance, thinking about processes, thinking about elections themselves, party operations, these are all different ways that we start to kind of pivot back and forth in our consideration. And even there, Senator Schickel, with this, it's a very consistent not, endorsing the idea of protected class, smokers, sexuality, race, gender. That's actually a line that connects, but very rarely do we make those connections between the two as simply as Senator Schickel just said.
Very well said. I'd like to add one more thing. I'm probably I'm the only person on here that has been elected as a Democrat and a Republican. I was first elected as a Democrat many years ago, and then switched over to Republican. And when you talk about the differences in the party, Michael, one thing I've really noticed when I switched parties in Boone County, there was not one Republican in the courthouse. 4 years later, the whole courthouse was Republican. What I've noticed, and I've noticed this in the Kentucky State Senate, people gravitate towards power. It's not as much about the ideals. That's what, you hear the term rhino, and a lot of conservative Republicans are very upset and have a lot of heartburn because they don't think everybody's conservative enough. I think a lot of that is because people want to be where the action is. And so when they register, especially if they go into public service, they just tend go towards the majority party because that's where the action is, and that's where all the hot primaries are.
Very good observation. You're watching the Frankfort Link live here on the Link NKY Facebook page. I hope we've also got a print edition coming out. It's going to be in the mailbox of every residence across Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties on February 28th. We just saw a nice proof of that recently. It looks beautiful. We're really excited to put that in your mailbox. Our new website, linknky.com, launches on Tuesday, the 15th. So hopefully we're well past our hangover celebrating a Bengals Super Bowl win on Monday. Tuesday, the new website launches, and I've got a new podcast coming out on that day as well. It's called The Kentucky Side. I hope you'll tune in for that one as well. We'll have some really interesting conversations about Northern Kentucky, all corners of Northern Kentucky. So what I like to do on this program is talk about, from your perspective, the lawmakers, what was important this week and what should we be keeping an eye on next week? And Representative Banta, I'll turn to you to get us started here. What was important this week? What should we keep an eye on for next week?
Oh, I think this week was I think the most controversial and probably a very important bill that came out was the unemployment House Bill 4. It made it off the floor. That took a lot of research, finding out where all the unemployment is in the state and making that decision to vote in favor of it. Next week, who knows? I don't know what bills are going to be called yet. Every day is a new day.
All right, Senator McDaniel, big news from this week. What to watch for next week?
It's interesting, Michael, because a lot of times the things that make big news aren't necessarily the biggest things. For example, name, image, and likeness this week. I will tell you, I saw more cameras in the room for testimony on name, image, and likeness than I've seen in every committee room combined so far this session. And stop and think about it. I remember when I was a college athlete. Never mind, I went to Covington Latin. But, the number of kids that's going to apply to is so small. But it's such a hot issue because of interest in sports. But what you really don't see, what you really don't hear a lot about, to me, I chair the Senate's Budget Committee. The budget spends $63 billion of taxpayer money. And so as we go through the machinations of the budget, for me, that's not just going to be this week's biggest thing. It was last week's biggest thing. It's going to be next week's biggest thing, because ultimately, absent a few social issues that each session will address, every public policy boils down to finance. Can you or can't you afford it? And to what extent do you afford it? And so it doesn't matter what you're interested in. Public policy, by and large, will boil down to finance. And so to me, once again, that will be the biggest issue every week, all session long.
Well, I know you were making a joke at Covington Latin's athletics expense, but I'll have you know, just last week, they posted that one of their swimmers brought home the first regional win for Covington Latin swimming. A student named Liam took first in the 200 IM. So way to go, Trojans. They are moving up in the world now that they
Good
have
work,
lesser
Liam.
athletes like Chris McDaniel out of the building. They're getting better athletes into it as well. All right, Senator Schickel, big news from you for this week. And what should we be looking to for next week?
Well, Chairman McDaniel's answer was hard to follow because that was an excellent answer. And I want to say dittos to what he said too about what's on the news usually isn't important. I was kind of sad this week when I saw all the coverage that got about the sports with Coach Cal because it just seemed like it wasn't proportional at all. But I'm very convicted on what I think is the most important thing, and it's Senate Bill 1. There's not one issue in Frankfort that affects more people than what Senate Bill 1 affects. Now, Michael, I'm not blessed with children. I don't have any children myself, but I can tell you this. People are very concerned, angry and concerned about our educational system. And we have a dysfunctional educational system, which is not accountable to taxpayers. Senate Bill 1 is a school governance bill, and it's nothing new. Senate Bill 1 has been introduced 6 or 7 times in the Kentucky General Assembly. It's always passed the Senate. It's never passed the House. We're hopeful and prayerful that this year will be the year we can get Senate Bill 1 passed, because Senate Bill 1 has to do with curriculum and school governance. And I can tell you without any doubt that is the most important thing and affects the most people and what the most people are concerned about in the Commonwealth of Kentucky today. And to Chairman McDaniel's point, it's also where we spend the most money. So that is what I am watching.
All right, let's turn to Mark Payne, Link NKY, politics and government reporter. I hope you were taking notes during those remarks so that you can pick up your assignments for next week. Does that sound about right of what you were planning to look to for next week?
That's a great question, Michael. And I was definitely taking notes. So I appreciate you asking that question because you did half of my work for next week. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And I agree with Senators Schickel and McDaniel about the name, image, and likeness meeting. I asked one of the reporters who has been covering Frankfort for quite a while, I asked him, would this many reporters be here if Coach Calipari wasn't here? And his answer was, I can't cuss on here, but it was no. So I thought that was pretty funny. But there's another important thing. We talked a little bit about.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about redistricting earlier. The injunction motion that was.
You're actually not
by
muted, Representative Banta.
Oh. Okay, I have a hair out of place. That's what I was saying. I'm sorry.
It's totally okay. Look at me.
I also have a hair out of place, so it's perfectly fine. But the Kentucky Democratic Party, who has filed a lawsuit in Franklin County for the redistricting maps, Judge Wingate heard the injunction motion today, and should be a decision within 10 days, is what he said. So,
is he looking at the constitutionality of the maps as adopted?
I wasn't unfortunately able to be there, but I know the argument has been, and I believe he brought this up as far as the constitutionality, but excessive splitting seems to be the big issue when it comes to these maps. And the argument against it was, in the past, there has been court cases claiming excessive splitting, and they were thrown out. But Judge Wingate said, that's in the past. This is a new time. So it will be interesting to see what he decides.
All right, let's go to Ryan Salzman, because I have a media question, I suppose. And I think it's similar to what Senator Schickel was talking about with, what people might get interested in, why we might go out to Union, for example, while we don't regularly cover the city commission there, but something that we might determine is of broader interest. So we got to be there for that. I saw Channel 12 there, the second time around. They're never anywhere over here unless they read it in our paper first. So, I mean, I get that. Politics is the same way for voters and for politicians. We're hearing a lot about crack pipes, for example, this week, right? I mean, if you're on social media, we're hearing a lot about crack pipes. And I don't think it's as big an issue as it's being made out to be, but it's easy to have an opinion about. and it's easy to use as a weapon, and it might be difficult to explain away. So talk a bit in general about the way the public is probably just not all that interested in how a budget is put together. But if someone's handing out crack pipes, I want to know about it.
I don't know if you know this, but the Bengals are in the Super Bowl. So that's like
We'll finish with the Super Bowl question, I promise.
So it's very paradoxical, and we talk about this a lot with my students, that in a country like ours, you have to have a media system that is commercially oriented. That is, they get their money from advertising. And it seems like that wouldn't be what you want, but the alternative is having a government run your media system. Now, and that's not perfect. I'm the one that's preaching against, false dichotomies, but that's essentially the gist, is that you either have it funded through private business, buying advertising, people buying subscriptions, or you have it funded and underwritten like a public good. And so because that's the case, then that means you have to have eyeballs, or if it's a podcast, Michael, in case you're wondering, you have to have people listening. And if people stop listening, you can't sell advertising. And if people stop watching or reading, you can't sell advertising and you go under. So it's a really delicate balance, but that's how you end up. If Coach Cal is anywhere in Frankfort, everybody's going to be chasing him down. It's not even that piece of legislation. Maybe I'm wrong that people really do care about that. We are in Kentucky after all, but it's really about Coach Cal, and people love Coach Cal. And so to have that kind of focus is essential, but we should ask ourselves, is that necessarily a bad thing? If it drives more eyeballs, that's a pretty happy story. I mean, these are good reasons to get eyeballs, to get viewers, to get listeners, to get readers. These are good reasons to have people click, and therefore you can charge more, you can get more advertising. The other side is things that are more bombastic. I'm gonna toss another one. I get the newspaper. I get the Inquirer delivered to my house. The day of the vote in Union, it was front page news. The day of the vote, not even the day after the vote, the day of the vote, it was on the front page of the Cincinnati Inquirer, the Kentucky Inquirer. It was on that front page. So it's easy to lament that. It's easy to lament this situation, but the reality is that that's how you get advertising, and hopefully we can support people like Mark Payne being down there in Frankfort and doing the hard work. And I'm hopeful and I'm grateful, Michael, to you and Mark and the other Mark, to everybody on your team, to Lacey, that y'all are trying to make this work, but we have to get y'all eyeballs. So I'm not going to drop an F-bomb yet, but if it gets you more eyeballs, I'm willing to do it for you, Michael. I will do that for you, but it really is a delicate balance. And this is the system we live in, and it requires that kind of friction and that kind of balance to make it work. So it's okay. At least Coach Cal, it's okay.
We're talking about legislation. And as Senator Schickel said earlier, we haven't had a Northern Kentucky reporter down there in quite some time. We're doing that. And we are finding response to a lot of the coverage. We're trying out this video, for example, and sometimes it's like a slow climb. Maybe people don't watch it live. They catch it at their leisure tomorrow when we put it out in the email, and they'll watch it or at least watch parts of it. This is important stuff. But Ryan, I'll Bellevue-ize this point for you. Once I found out a new restaurant was going into Joe's Crab Shack, I couldn't write that article fast enough. So we have to build an audience in a variety of ways in order to get them to finally turn around and pay attention to what's going on. And we get to do it. We get to learn how to do it with everyone watching, which is a unique position to be in as we try to figure out how to solve a media desert crisis, a situation that even the large media companies haven't quite figured out. So we're going to figure it out somehow. Let's end the show by talking about the Bengals. I'll throw a softball here to close things down. And I'll bring it up through the context of Silver Grove Mayor Neil Bedell, who I hope he's watching. And if not, I hope someone lets him know he got a shout out on the program tonight. Silver Grove Mayor Neil Bedell suggested to us that we should reach out to all the mayors and get them to predict the winner and the score of the Super Bowl. I don't think we're going to be able to do that in time for the big game, but we will share Mayor Bedell's prediction. He says the Bengals are going to win 23-19. And since I don't have any other mayors around the region, I've got to turn to you lawmakers. Chris McDaniel, what is the final score on Sunday when the Super Bowl is over?
Sue, and the Super Bowl is over. Cincinnati will win 27-24 on Evan McPherson field goal.
Oh, drama. All right. Representative Banta, final score of the Super Bowl on Sunday.
27-24, because Chris McDaniel is a genius with numbers and I would never go against anything he said. But I think it'll be because that lovely gentleman, Joe Burrows, does something cute and wonderful. I just think he is absolutely a blessing to football. He's such a cute kid.
He is a cute kid. All right, Senator Schickel, what's the score of the Super Bowl on Sunday?
You have stumped me. I know nothing about sports. So
Oh, stop. Well, you can at least make a wild guess here, right?
20 to the Bengals will win 23-17.
What, did you go to Cuff Latin too?
No, I didn't. I could never get in there. I can assure you.
All right, Ryan Salzman, final score of the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Bengals by 1 million, but Andrew Whitworth does not give up a sack. Okay, Andrew Whitworth with the Rams, he does not give up a sack. He has an amazing game, but Bengals by 1 million.
All right, how about that? Mark Payne, you're going to have time to watch that game on Sunday, I hope?
I am going to try. I'm guessing 17-10 Bengals. It seems surreal that they're in the Super Bowl, and if they won it, I don't know what I would think, but if it's surreal, I hope they win.
A low-scoring game. I think it's going to be maybe a slow start, but it's going to pick up in the second half. Bengals win 34-30. Who day? My big thanks to all of you for watching tonight and for being with us. I'm Michael Monks here at Link NKY. We've been joined by Mark Payne, Link NKY politics and government reporter, Dr. Ryan Salzman, NKU associate professor of political science, and Bellevue City Councilman Senator John Schickel, Republican of Union, State Representative Kim Banta, Republican of Fort Mitchell, and Kentucky State Senator Chris McDaniel, Republican of Taylor Mill. Thanks to all of you for being with us. I hope you'll respond when we reach out again. We only have so many lawmakers to go around, and the session, I think, will be longer than the number of episodes that we could get fresh faces on. So when we call, please come back on, and hopefully there's some good legislation to talk about, boring or otherwise. If it's important, bring it to our attention, and certainly to Mark Payne's attention. Thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this hour.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
All right,
Michael.
read Mark Payne's reporting at linknky.com starting on Tuesday. In the meantime, you can still visit rcnky.com. The new website launches next Tuesday. Be on the lookout for the new podcast, The Kentucky Side, hosted by me. I'm recording it tonight here at Northern Kentucky University. And look for our new print edition, The Link Reader. It's coming to your mailbox on February the 28th.
And come back and see us in Union, Michael.
I can't wait to get out there. You've got a very fine Kroger. Ryan knows this. I like to base my visits around Northern Kentucky on the quality of the Kroger, because the one in downtown Covington is the worst. So I like to go around and see who's got, different ones. Bellevue's got the best one. Bellevue's got the best Kroger.
We'll be looking for you.
All right. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching, everybody.